We are looking at buttons from Audi, from Skoda, that are the regular physical buttons. And then we are also looking into the capacitive buttons or the touch buttons. And this actually is from Texas Instruments, and it is a
haptic feedback controller. All right, welcome back to the VW ID Talk podcast, your home for all things EV, particularly VW. I am Wes, and here is Jan, the man behind the plan. I'm wearing my Carmen Gia shirt today to prepare. I want to remind you that you can catch us on your favorite podcast platforms like Overdrive and Apple Podcast, and of course here on YouTube for the visual experience. And Jan, what are we talking about today?
So today is quite exciting because we are looking inside of different interior buttons. We are looking at buttons from Audi, from Skoda, that are the regular physical buttons. And then we are also looking into the capacitive buttons or the touch buttons that you may know from your Volkswagen.
Okay, great. So yeah, I didn't think Volkswagens had buttons. Okay, so good. So here we are.
They do, yeah.
All right. So I know you've done quite a bit of work on this. Tell us what you found out here.
Yeah. So what I found out that around 2020, a lot of VW models, especially the ID models, have changed from the physical into capacitive buttons. Now, we've just created this table to kind of set the stage of what is the difference. So of course, the physical button is a button that has some physical tactile switch inside, but
it will physically move.
It physically moves when you touch it, but also the first column says easy to find geometry, which means that if you would search for the button blindly, then you might be able to find that button. It's the second button from left.
You don't have to look away from the road to press the button. Yeah,
exactly. And I feel like that's the big benefit of these physical buttons. That's what the capacitive buttons don't have.
Right.
Also, what you just said is that the physical buttons physically move when you press them, and you kind of hear also this like clunk, right? But we'll get to the clunk.
Okay.
The physical movement is something that the button does naturally by how it's built. From the capacitive buttons, some buttons have this physical movement, and it's built electronically through haptic feedback, and we'll show you how it works. But unfortunately, most of the buttons on the ID don't have this capability.
They do not have haptic feedback. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so what it means that you press the button, but you don't know if it's pressed, right? And with the physical feedback, there's also this audible feedback. So, for the Audi, when you press the button, you hear this intense clicking. So it's not only that the button moves, but you also hear the clicking that comes from the button.
It has a mechanical actuating switch.
Exactly.
That actually, okay, great. And you can hear that here on the microphone.
The VW ones, for example, that don't have any physical feedback, they just don't move. And maybe sometimes the audio, like from the audio from your speakers, you hear but
like
sometimes
through the center speaker. Yeah.
My brain doesn't connect it together, right? So it just, I don't know. So, all right. So we have two types of buttons, physical and capacitive. Each of these button types have different classes, like higher class and regular. So let's get into that differentiation here.
Okay, great. So Jan put this slide together showing kind of a hierarchy. You can see on the left, you go from highest cost on the top down to lowest cost. And the exercise is left up to only VW knows why they chose to do certain things. But in the hierarchy here, you can see the Audi at the top, the Audi AC control module, which is actually going to be the most expensive part. Not only has physical buttons in it, and not only do they have physical actuating switches, it also has an LCD in the middle. And now the prices we listed here are retail prices from a German dealership. So yeah, you can find them cheaper. This is just to show you relative expense of manufacturing and why VW might have done this. The second thing, you come down to the second picture from the top there, and the Škoda Enyaq or the Škoda L-Roc both use physical switches, but they're a less expensive one than what comes in the Audi. And you can also see that there's no LCD there. And those are much, much less expensive. The retail price is like $100 to $150 versus $500 and some dollars. And then you come down, and we listed two examples for the ID.4. The steering wheel buttons there, which cost somewhere between $50 and $100. These are 100% capacitive, but the steering wheel buttons have haptic feedback in them. so you can feel a little bit in addition to hearing the clunk through the audio. And then lastly, at the bottom, the cheapest buttons are the ones that are the climate button, the mode button, the hazards that lives underneath the sliders on your display. I've seen those for as little as $10. Those have no haptic feedback. They just make an audible clunk. So the only way to know if you've pressed the button is waiting for something to happen. And if what you wanted to happen doesn't happen, well, then you can press it again. You go from being very expensive in the order of $500 to being, I'd say, 2 orders of magnitude less for the ID.4 buttons.
Exactly. And of course, as you can imagine, manufacturers figuring out how to produce their car more efficiently, and so they are removing some of these components. So, for example, looking at the Q6 e-tron, the AC module has been removed from there, and the climate controls are managed only through the display. So, our hypothesis is that this is done to optimize, of course, the cost. But unfortunately, sometimes it feels like the experience, the user experience, the driver experience isn't that awesome.
Yeah. Well, 2 years ago, Volkswagen said that the message was received that customers don't like these haptic buttons and they're going to go back, and they're still releasing them. So the first example I've seen is the new GTI. The 2025 GTI has a
physical buttons on the steering wheel.
On the steering wheel.
Totally.
All right. And so now we're going to dive deeper into the individual ones. So then here's the Audi. Okay. So Jan, you have this one, right?
Yeah, I have. I actually have all 4 of those. And
okay.
Why would somebody have all of that? Well, because I want to retrofit them into my ID.4, and I've already made this work, so it is feasible to retrofit this panel into the ID.4. Okay. Now,
and this is the Q4 e-tron panel.
That is
right.
Correct.
And so you can see you can see that the buttons on there, you've got the max defrost, the rear defrost, you've got the seat heat for the passenger, seat heat for the driver, and then the auto and sync buttons are both climate control buttons, right?
Yep. So these are purely climate buttons, and there are 2 types of buttons. The one that you just push. So, for example, this one, and you can probably hear the clicking.
Okay.
Now, what you also see is that there are the 3 LEDs that you would expect, because if you're adjusting seat heating, then you, of course, you like stage 1, 2, 3, etc. But then also there are these bi-directional buttons, so you can push it down and pull it up as well. Right?
And so those are programmable. The functions, they can make them do different things depending on what's displayed on the
precisely
LCD.
What's displayed on the LCD. So, for example, this can be on adjusting temperature. You can adjust the climate mode, or where the climate is blowing, etc.
Okay.
So I've already removed the frame, so we can very easily look inside here.
Okay. So it does not come like this with the ribbon cable disconnected.
No, of course not. Like, this is so well engineered. I almost felt, and when I remove the PCB, you'll be surprised what we'll find inside. But maybe let's take a look at some of the things that you see here. This is the ribbon cable for the display. This probably will be like a controller for the display. This would be the controller for the entire unit. And so, for example, if let's take a look at these bi-directional buttons. So you see that when I pull it up, it's moving and it's kind of actuating the physical control there.
Yeah.
Right.
You can definitely see those switches. The switches are mounted perpendicular to the board, and they're horizontally. Actually, for people that are PCB nerds, you can see the button actuating. It's really cool to see it and feel it.
Yes, 100%. So I'll just remove this, and then on the other side here, for example, this is the button for the seat heating. So you see that this is the actual button, and then you see 3 LEDs for the stage of the seat heating, and this one is for backlight. So you kind of the button is backlit, right?
Wow, you can get backlit buttons in Volkswagen. Who knew?
And that's not all. There is this rubber part that helps, I think, 2 pieces. First, it makes it like super watertight. So if somebody would be cleaning the dash, but it also kind of makes the button actuate and spring nicely.
Spring back a little bit. Okay,
exactly.
Yeah. And if you spill your whole coffee on your dash, you're not going to ruin the PCB.
You're not going to ruin it, exactly. But plus, let's say when we look at, again, one of these switches, then inside here, there is a spring. So this is the up and down springs.
It's a leaf spring, looks like, right?
Yeah. Okay. It's a metal spring right there. Plus there's some rubber grommet inside. So this is actually like very well done. And it felt like when they were tasked to do this, maybe somebody said, you have unlimited budget, just go and build this. And so this is like, so I don't want to say overbuilt, but it's like very well engineered,
beautifully built. And once they built it, because it's Audi, they can use it in multiple different Audi models.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. So this is the top of the line.
Okay, that's great. And so the next one down the list would be the Škoda Enyaq and L-Roc buttons.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. They're also using it in other Škoda models.
Okay. And you can see what that looks like in the car there.
And you might be asking me again, Jan, why do you have these buttons? Well, because I want to I actually retrofit them into my ID.4. Yeah. They are even the connector. You won't believe it. The connector is the same connector. So it's literally like you can plug it in and it works.
I wasn't going to ask you that, Jan, because I know better. Because you have to understand. That's why. That's why we have this podcast. And so you can see the climate button. We can see that's a door locking button, which is something
door lock.
We don't have in the Capacitive.
That we don't have on the ID. Yeah, correct. And these two, this is a version that has these two spots blinded because it doesn't have those features, that specific version. But you see that the buttons physically move. And what is interesting is that the button is backlit, but when the lock is locked, then it also shows in yellow that it's locked. And the same, for example, when you turn on this rear heater, it's normally backlit in white, but when you turn it on, it is backlit in amber. Exactly. And I'll show you inside. It's actually very nicely visible inside. And these buttons click as well. Okay,
but it sounds like a much softer click than the mechanical click.
I agree. So you can definitely tell that the technology is there, different compared to the e-tron. Now, what I haven't highlighted on the e-tron one is that the motherboard here, at least parts of it, have they call it conformal coating. You see this paint here?
I could see that reflection. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's that they call it conformal coating, which protects the PCB from moisture, for example.
Which is actually one of the reasons they're having to do the recall on the ID door handles, is because the PCBs on those did not have a proper conformal coating to keep moisture.
Very likely. Yeah, very likely could be. And as you see here, this board definitely does not have any conformal coating, but the way it's done, it's actually very nice because the PCB in the car is hidden below the dash, right? So it almost looks like piano buttons. It really is like a piano button.
Oh, so where you press the key and it lifts up to touch the...
Yes, exactly. So it almost is like a piano here, right? So those Skoda guys are playing piano every day in their car.
Yeah.
And what I have already removed, there is a hinge. That it's like a rod that goes throughout the entire assembly, so this of course doesn't fall out, but I've already
them lined up the same. And now the two slots there where you can see where the blank buttons, those are just blanks. Those switches
are just blank buttons. Yes. So it depends on the part number. There are of course part numbers that have all of these switches included.
And I'm only seeing 3 pins on the PCB there, so that means the only thing coming to it is probably a power, a ground, and the LIN bus or something, right?
100%. And as you can, because you see that there's of course no haptic feedback, well, because the buttons are by themselves provide haptic feedback. The way how these buttons are done, maybe you remember some old calculators that were done exactly like this. So there is this pad on the PCB, right? And what's interesting that you see that they have a PCB, same PCB for all the versions, including those that have the blank buttons, but of course the parts are missing in those two spots. And then right here in this rubber gasket, this small...
it's a conductive pad.
It is conductive pad. Precisely.
And so that's what we would call a rubber dome, like what a lot of cheap computer keyboards use.
Yeah. And then, of course, when you press it, then this whole thing presses. Right?
Yeah.
And it's, of course, done so nicely because the the piano's design makes it's a lever, right? So you literally feel like the throw might be the press might be deeper than what it is, because it's like leveraging the lever there.
It's multiplying. Okay.
Yeah,
I
thought
multiplying.
that was really interestingly designed. And one last thing that I've also mentioned here, you're noticing that there are some LEDs that are here on the side of the board. And so this top one is for the backlight. And then let's say you lock your car, and these are the two yellow ones. And because that light is intense, so that's why there are two yellow ones. And the same for both of the climate buttons here.
And so the light is kind of channeled down through the button through a light pipe or something built into the back of the switch.
Yes, it's actually done through this button. Now here you see that the button is hollow. So the light from the LED, it literally like shines through this channel into the button. And this button, if you would pop it out, it's white, but it's sprayed over black, and it only reveals the the function. So maybe if I
so it's not double shot plastic or anything.
No, it's not. It's not. It's some like overspray.
Interesting.
Mechanism.
And it's interesting also, there's no mechanism for the tactile feedback. It's the rubber dome itself, the conductive dome gives it the tactile feedback and the springiness. Okay. This Skoda switch performs the same function that our capacitive functions under the screen perform in the ID, but the Audi ones are for climate exclusively. So you don't have to use the screen. Okay. Gotcha.
Yep. Right. And now finally we are getting into capacitive buttons on the steering wheel. What I want to show you is that on the top, these capacitive buttons have this touch sensitive plate that has LEDs below that shine through again and show those individual symbols. Okay.
Right. So when the power is off on your steering wheel, you can't see what the buttons are at all.
So that's kind of interesting feature. What you see here, that these boxes, these are those LEDs.
Okay.
Now, the unique portion is this is a pressure pad. There are 3 pressure pads. It's part of the haptic feedback. Now, you've seen these 3 green T-shaped parts that fell from this part of the button set. And these sit on these pressure sensors. And they have 2 functions. A, they isolate the internal unit because that vibrates. We'll show you that in a minute, but it also helps to detect the pressure that is then sent to the internal unit.
Right. So the first time I pressed on that, it looks like it's moving, but
it is. It actually is moving. It actually physically is moving just a little bit, right? You see that it's physically moving. The real magic is done by the software that runs on these chips. So this is the main chip. This is some interface with the rest of the car. And this is a driver of a motor, of the vibration motor that sits below this PCB. So when we open this PCB, you can see the motor right there. Then right here below, you see this is motor. That has like a weight on half of its it's
unevenly weighted.
Exactly.
So normally when you make a rotating motor, you want to be perfectly weighted so that it doesn't vibrate, but this is intentionally lopsided to make it vibrate. And you can feel
and so it's done so smartly. Then when you when you make a specific force on the touchpad, then the main unit processes that, reads that, and triggers the motor. And the motor gives you a feeling by vibrating the part of the assembly that you've pressed the button.
It's a pretty impressive little piece of engineering that they go through so much effort to make something feel like you're pressing a button.
Exactly. I know. Exactly. So this is pretty. It's very amazing how this was engineered, and I'm not sure if I want to switch these buttons or if I want to keep them. I don't know yet.
Because that's too easy for you, right? You only do difficult projects.
Exactly.
So,
all right. So we've talked about the steering wheel buttons, and by the way, we say $100 each. We meant like each of the switch. Normally, the list price is around $200 for both of them.
Okay.
And the next one are these touch buttons that are below the infotainment, but these were removed for the 2025 model year or the cars that have the newer than version 4. So version 4 and higher cars.
That would be 2024 Pro trims and higher. Right.
Cool. Yeah. Plus the ID bus as well.
And yes, of course, the bus.
Yeah.
And they were removed and made into they moved the hazards button down in between the two air vents there.
Yeah.
And then the other two buttons are just on the screen now. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes. They made them, they kind of eliminated the buttons and they moved them to the screen.
So this is directly analogous to your Skoda part there.
That is 100%. Yes. And when we pop this out, so there is this one plastic piece, and you see that there are hard clips because this is not moving. There's no haptic feedback built into this.
Okay.
These are the sensors. These are the antennas that kind of detect if your finger is close to them. I almost feel that they're doing some magic with multiplexing the signal, like quickly multiplexing signal across these and reading the inducted signal into these antennas
to tell which button was pressed.
Yeah. Think about it as an antenna, right? I would just call these antennas.
Wow, I never would have thought of it that way.
And then when we pop this out, and it has the main brain here that runs a code that detects the finger and then sends the signal to the rest of the car. Because it doesn't have any haptic feedback, right? It doesn't have the physical motor, nor it has the controller for the motor, right?
Gotcha.
All right. So this is the part from my ID.4.
Made in Czechia.
Try again, Wes.
Czechia.
Okay. Thank you. What is also made in Czechia on this podcast?
Jan?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Excellent.
I
read the right thing. I just pronounced it wrong. I'm sorry.
So in summary, we've showed you 4 different modules with 2 different technologies with physical buttons and capacitive buttons. And we also talked about how some capacitive buttons, like the ones on the wheels, are on the steering wheel, are different because they have the motor that vibrates and creates the impression that you press the button physically, even you don't physically press it.
Great information. Thanks for taking the time to take all these apart and show us.
And there is one more capacitive button here. For those of you who have touchscreen, please subscribe so you don't miss this episode.
Yes. Thank you. All right. Well, we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.